Hi folks, Steven here. So this is going to be a recap of my time at last weekend's Charlotte Pokémon Regionals. So yeah, North Carolina. So I have, as usual, a little presentation to go through here. We're going to go right into that. By the way, I will be sharing some of this stuff with Overload Events, who is in charge of this regional. Okay, so as far as the event itself, I decided, kind of on, not a complete whim, but wanted to break up my winter. So I decided to head over to this. I had never really been to Charlotte. I'd been through the airport a couple times on business trips in years past, but I had never really been to the city. I've been to other parts of the Carolinas, including Raleigh-Durham, Greenville, South Carolina, but not really to Charlotte itself. So this was kind of an interesting experience for me on top of all that. Alright, starts Thursday. Now the main event is Saturday and Sunday, but there is some stuff on Friday, so I decided to leave on a Thursday. Now this picture might look a little weird. It's the inside of a bus, an intercity bus. And those of you who are more familiar with the structure of the U.S. airline industry may be wondering why I didn't just take a flight from Madison direct to Charlotte. Since Charlotte is an American hub, it's pretty well covered and does in fact have 2 or 3 flights a day to Madison. The basic reason is money. I could afford to fly out of Madison direct to Charlotte, but it was a little hard to justify. I'll admit I kind of sprung for this. It was cheaper for me to fly first class out of O'Hare than it was to get an economy direct flight from Madison to Charlotte. Madison is kind of an infamously expensive airport. I think it's the most expensive average ticket fare out of the top 100 airports in the U.S. As of the last quarter there. So we have that notoriety. So it just made more sense, even though I sure could afford to fly out of Madison, it just made more sense to head down to O'Hare. So I took the bus, as I usually do when I go there. Alright, so found my gate fairly easily. It's actually at Terminal 2, which this is a mainline flight, United, not American. The American does have more flights per day, obviously, since both of those airports, O'Hare and Charlotte, are their hubs. But United has a couple a day. This is a mainline flight, but it's coming from Terminal 2, which is a little unusual. That wasn't actually too hard to find, though. So yeah, I talked myself out of eating at McDonald's again at the O'Hare Terminal 2. And so I went to Stanley's Kitchen and Tap. And you can see I had a burger and a salad there. It was just fine. I wouldn't call it amazing or anything like that, but I do always like to mention some of the places I eat there. I guess the most interesting thing is, yeah, this was a sports bar, so they had TVs, but they also had water bottles that I guess you could buy straight off the table or something like that, which was kind of interesting. But food was fine, so not much too else to say there. And so, yeah, I took the flight. It was pretty, standard there. The only thing is we took a little extra time to get away from the gate, I guess. I don't remember exactly. I think there was some weird status light or something they had to resolve or something like that. On the flight there, I took advantage of the Wi-Fi entertainment and watched a documentary on Donna Summer that her family helped put out, I guess, last year. I think it's done through HBO, so if you have HBO Max or if you have the HBO channel, you can probably get it that way too. I think it's called This Is Love or something like that. I forget exactly what it is. Now, bad news, no mention of The Power of One. They actually don't talk a lot about her career, the later parts of it in terms of like the songs she put out in the 90s and early 2000s and whatnot, which is kind of unfortunate. But I did learn a lot about her. I knew a fair bit. But this was kind of nice to learn more about her, the person, and she's kind of interesting as well. FYI on that, definitely some language and stuff, but nothing, I think it'd be like a PG-13 if it were an actual, movie there. Alright, but in any case, I made it to my hotel. One notorious thing about Charlotte is they have not yet built out their rail line. They have a rail line, but it doesn't go to the airport yet. That is next on their list, so I took the bus on the way there just because, I don't know, I kind of wanted to. But I did get to my hotel room, and I got this, I'm probably saying this wrong, this is I believe, a Korean restaurant in downtown-ish Charlotte called Bulgogi Box. And I had some pork over there on the right, and actually a Korean corn dog on the left there. I forget what made it super Korean there, other than maybe some spices and stuff, but with a name like that, you know, what else was I going to do? All right. Friday, first sort of day, not of the main tournament, but of the event, I guess you could say. All right, well, here's a nice big diagram of the show floor. They took up the A and the B halls. So I guess there are three main halls at the Downtown Convention Center in Charlotte. There's A, B, and C. A and B are adjacent, and in this case they're using them together. That's not that unusual at a convention center to be able to do that. So they had a decent amount of space. Now you came in through that part where it says entrance on the top. As you can see, there's vendors on one side. There's lots of chairs. There's a stage front and center there where all the stuff is. And just to give you a picture of what this looked like in practice, yeah, so here's a bunch of photos. They have about, if you've ever been to a regional, you kind of know what to expect here. They have the first step area where you can learn to play the trading card game. They have the video gaming area, which unfortunately this one was not adjacent to the side event, so I didn't actually spend a lot of time there. Usually when I'm waiting for an event to start, I would often go to that. Top right, you can see a little bit of the side event's prize area and tickets and stuff. Bottom left is one of those areas. I think from the appearance there, it's either Go or the main theater of video games. And then the bottom right, you can see the side deck, which is one of the one of the vendors they had there. Didn't spend a lot of time there, especially since it was on the opposite side of the hall from the side events. So yeah, if you look at that picture over on the left-hand side is where a lot of the side event stuff is. You can see they have some large vertical banners. If there's a name for that, someone please let me know. Where they have pack battles and event tickets you can see on the far right. You did have to buy tickets for this. This were about $6 each. The smaller events were like one ticket, up to like the bigger events, I think were about $5 for like some of the build-in battles and stuff. And then you can see the pink area and some of the other stuff. So they did try to color code things a little bit in regards to some of the events there. But that's where I was going to spend most of my time here. Alright, so I did my best to try to get to as many different things they had there, and especially things I was not familiar with or that seemed kind of unique. So one of those are these things called retro battles, and what they did here is they have a bunch of, I think they're actually all 2DSs of Sun and Moon, and they have, their boxes are filled with, well, let me just say I don't get the feeling they did this completely up to spec, that the Pokémon Company. I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble here, but I do have to be honest here. I'm pretty sure they probably use some things to populate that. In any case, what they do is they give you a little slip of paper that had a list of boxes and positions and stuff like that. They changed it a little bit over time, as well as some of the rules and stuff like that. A little bit. Basically, they would pick all your stuff for you. You would identify those Pokemon and put them into a team, and you would play 3 rounds. So this ended up being pretty random. Like the first day, I lucked out and I got Kyogre, which they let us use held items for that first day, so I was able to use the blue orb, and then I had a Tapu Fini on the same team, so that gave me a pretty big advantage with that one. The second day, I know they didn't let us use held items, and I got a different thing there, but you can sort of see, let's see, I think that what you see there is one of the ones I had on my second day or on my second retro battle. But it was very random, obviously. You never knew what you were going to get. There were some folks who got much worse teams than I did. I think I lucked out on the 2 or 3 of these I did. I would have loved to have done more. But yeah, so I did enjoy this format. I think the other problem they had is keeping all the systems charged. One problem with the 2DS, or the new Nintendo 2DS, is the battery is actually not user replaceable. So I don't know what they're going to do if they need to unend this sometime. With all the other models you can replace the battery, as I just did in my new Nintendo 3DS. That finally came in. But yeah, so definitely enjoyed this. Very random though, but that was kind of part of the fun of it. All right, so Friday night, ordered from Dilworth Neighborhood Grill. Now, if you can't tell what that is an omelet. They do all-day breakfast there, apparently. And over on the right, you can see a little bowl of fruit. So pretty good food there. I had very good food, which I expected. And I get pretty much anywhere in the country or the world that I travel to, I wind up getting some of this. Some really good food there. But, yeah. All right, Saturday. First day of the main event, but that's not what I'm here for. So, all right. Oh, yeah. Last weekend was Community Day Classic. Porygon was back. The big thing with this is actually that I think I was able to get, it was like triple catch experience or something like that. So I was able to make up a lot of experience points, which is something to keep pace with where I want to be in the game, was a big help. So it was a little weird being in between stuff and trying to get that going and so on, but I managed to get through most of the Community Day. Excuse me, if not all of it. All right, but Catch Cup. So this was kind of an interesting thing. They only had one of these all weekend, at least that I could see on the schedule. And what they did here is, well, the original idea is they would basically tell us to go to a certain area of the game, and they would say, okay, you have 30 minutes to catch 6 Pokemon, build a team with whatever you find in there. Now, unfortunately, their first instinct was to put us into the terrarium from the second Scarlet and Violet DLC. Unfortunately, at that time, I had not started it, and neither had another person who was in the group. So they had to send us to Kitakami, and we ended up using the northern half of that, and that's where you get the team that I show there. Let's see, I got a Shiftry, Sandslash, Pachirisu, not many electric choices in that area. Sudowoodo, Ariados, and Lurantis. So, maybe not the most balanced team. I also had a Lombre that I managed to pick up. Unfortunately, I did not have a Waterstone in my inventory, or that might have replaced either the Lurantis or the Shiftry. I also had built this team together thinking we would be playing doubles, and we ended up playing 4-on-4 singles out of a 6-person team. So, as you might notice here, I have a Sandslash and a Pachirisu, so I can use Discharge on the Pachirisu to hit everything else, but not the Sandslash, and so on and so forth. So I was kind of thinking in that realm, and that didn't really work out there. So I think of the 3 rounds I played, I only won. It was best of 3 for this particular one, and I only won 1 game out of all of that. So I didn't do super well. I'm sure with a little more experience and knowledge, I could have done better. But it was still an interesting and fun event, and I might give this another shot at another tournament. All right, TCG raid battles. So raid battles, I'm not sure. They've been around in the TCG for a couple of years. From what I've heard, they wanted to get them into the Sword and Shield generation, but because of the pandemic and stuff, they had to put that all on hold, even though they had some materials made out for them. But here they had 2 different types of TCG raid battles. There were pickup events for 4 people versus 1, super powerful Pokemon for the raid battle. But I went into one that was a 9 or 10 person group battle, which the person who was, I guess you could call him a DM, a dungeon master, admitted is probably more than you would like, especially on linear tables. On a round table, it might work better. But in any case, in the group I had, we took a long time there. But we pulled our opponent was a Galarian Rapidash V, and I played over on the right-hand side there a deck that I built recently. I have nicknamed it Spinal Tap. It's a Vivillon Marowak deck. And part of that is Bug Buzz, of course, does 110. It goes up to 11. The Marowak ended up not being very useful. I ended up mostly discarding those cards when prompted to because the Rapidash, the Galarian Rapidash, has a resistance to fighting, so it wasn't going to be very useful there. But it was interesting seeing some of the interplay there. Sort of the way this one worked is that basically we would do all of our turns at once. We'd have a certain number, we'd have up to, a certain number of supporters we could use between all of us. We could have 1 stadium out between us and the DM there, and so on and so forth. You could play anything that wasn't a tool. Tools had to stay on there. You notice I have a pot helmet tool on my Vivillon. That actually helped me out quite a bit in reducing damage on a Pokemon that doesn't have a ton of HP. This is it's supposed to be a single prize deck, actually, that I'm running at the moment on the right-hand side there. So that saved me a fair bit over the course of the game. It never came into play, but I did have like Gardenia's Vigor in my deck, and there was a Leafeon player not too far from me. We never ended up using it that way. Towards the end of the scenario, I was able to get Artazon, I'm not sure if that's Artisan or Artazon or whatever, out, which helped people get some, you can get a non-rule box basic out of your deck each turn, which makes it pretty useful. As far as how it went, I enjoyed it for the most part. Unfortunately, our group, we were like, this was one of the last events on Saturday, as far as scheduled events go, and we were of like the 5 or 6 or whatever raids that were going on for that event. They split us up in the groups of 9 or 10. We were the last one to finish, and that was just based on like the deck that the DM had that was, especially on her first turn, took a long time to get through. There were some constraints there. She could only go through her deck a couple times a turn. Her attack is chosen at random, and so on and so forth. Our goal, of course, was to do enough damage to force her to discard cards from her deck until eventually she had nothing left. We did end up winning this scenario. So that worked out, but yeah, there was a fair amount of downtime, especially on certain turns where we had very little to work with. She was able to base it on the stuff that was in sort of the pre-constructed deck of cards she had to go with the Pokemon there. She was able to disrupt us very much so. Also a lot of rock, paper, scissors, which we did pretty well on. I forget exactly which card it was that we were trying to prevent her from using. But you kind of get the idea. So we did end up winning. I think I only got 1 or 2 of my Pokemon knocked out, which, like I said, that tool there really does help. Reduces damage by 30, which is quite a bit in a format like this. So I really did think that worked out well. The one other thing I should mention is that Vivillion's other attack lets you get a special condition on a Pokemon. Unfortunately, you would get the damage from burn or poison, but she erases all of those when her turn starts. So you get 10 or 20 extra damage out of it. Not bad for 1 energy, but be kind of nice if we could make that more sustainable. The other problem I had, she had Hex Maniac in her deck, and that stopped me from doing the fast evolution that the line there can do with its ability. But yeah, it's definitely some things that probably should be streamlined there if possible, but yeah. Alright, so Saturday night. I hope I don't, so as a resident of Wisconsin, I did consider staying up till like 11 to watch the Packers 49ers game, which I do know the Packers lost. But I decided I didn't want to stay up late. I did order some food from Bobby O's Barbecue. I do try to get from places whenever I go to these things that are locally owned and operated, or are a regional chain at most. And this is some, you can see some shredded pork over there, a salad, and some baked beans, and a little bit of bread there. Also some barbecue sauce came with that. That was pretty good as well. So I did enjoy that. Alright, Sunday. Second day of the main thing, but again, side events. So, here's where we're going to go here. So, this day didn't work out. Well, let me sort of explain here. So I signed up. I want to do their retro deck format. So what this is basically a couple times a day they would offer a thing where they would have decks based on prior metagames. These went back to, I guess, the Zeros. I had one from 2009 here. And in principle, this is a good idea, and it worked out very well for some folks. However, so if you take a look at this picture here, this is what I, and to a certain extent, several other people in our group got. This is a Team Galactics deck from, Team Galactic, I should say, not plural, deck from the 4th generation. You can see it's got a lot of the SP Pokemon from Team Galactic, as well as a few other things. This is sort of a smattering there. It also has all the being legendaries, Azelf, Uxie, Mesprit, that can be played in tandem there. So Sort of the problem with this is, first off, even though I was somewhat familiar with most of the cards in here from being around back then, and I was able to help out other folks, because there are so many options here, and you end up, the way these decks are done, you end up nickel and diming a lot of folks to get prizes. Our games went on for so long, but they didn't have a time limit for rounds, unfortunately. That would have made people, maybe play faster. And so, I'm not too bitter about this, given my luck in the retro battles, but I didn't get the best deck here either. I ended up going 1 and 2, and that 1 was a bye. I felt like I stayed for the third round. There was supposed to be 4. I stayed for 3 because I really wanted to make sure I got 2 real games in to give an opinion on this. But I don't know if it's just this era or what, but it seems like this was really slow, and we spent it took us 3 or maybe even 4 hours to get through just a couple rounds of this, and it was really draining. So my advice would be to avoid this, and I can kind of see why in Gen 5 they sort of recalibrated the game to move faster. I still think they drastically overcompensated in Generation 5 and made some not so great choices there. But overall, this was one of the weaker ones. I think it mostly owes to this particular era of the trading card game and how long things take. There are faster decks in this era. I know someone had a Beedrill deck and stuff like that does play more quickly and stuff like that. But, when you have a near mirror of some of these decks, they just take so long. And to be honest, it's not the most interesting thing. So that is one thing I would probably do differently, is just avoid this era or this range of decks or something like that. Or maybe include a cheat sheet in some of these that explain what some of the cards are and how they're used. Maybe that would speed things up, but even someone like me, I'll admit I probably could have played a little bit faster and more decisively. So yeah, this one didn't work out so great. I had hoped to do more stuff. I ended up doing a couple of pack battles. And that worked out, fairly well. Got some okay stuff. At the end of the day, I was pretty spent. I did redeem all the tickets I had earned. You don't just get cards out of some of these. A lot of these, if you do well enough, you get some points. I got enough points to get... I purposely tried to minimize the number of things I actually bought from the prize wall. So one of them is not here. I've donated it to the local league here in Madison on the west side for their next tournament or whatever. Is a trainer's toolkit or toolbox or something like that. It's basically this thing that has a bunch of cards and some other stuff to get people started in. Didn't really have a use for it, but just kind of wanted that. The other thing I picked up is this, hopefully you can see it here, is this headset here. It's actually for the Switch. I did have to ask, is this I thought it was originally wireless. It is wired. The other thing I'd ask, is this children's or full size? Apparently it is full size here. But I picked this up in part because I do have a headset. I think this will work with some other types of things in there. I have a headset that I use for some of my game streams or ones where I need to be able to use my hands to type on my computer and stuff like that. The last time I would have used it was when we did the artificial intelligence one a couple months ago. But that one, the pads on the ears are not really holding up. And although I could certainly replace those, I think getting a fresh one is, not the worst idea ever. So that's how I ended up spending my stuff there. All right, I think I said I talked about the prize wall there. A lot of different things over there. And so I did try to minimize the number of different things I took out of it. All right, so for dinner on Sunday, I went to Capiche. I assume that's how it's pronounced. Which I think is an Italian word that means get it or something like that. I'm not sure. Real Italian Kitchen. So this is a downtown restaurant. I ended up picking up, let's see, that is some sausage fettuccine alfredo with broccoli and sausage, of course. Got some Parmesan cheese down there. Got a little bit of lemon cream cake. I also ended up picking up an order of bread, which I ate some the next day. But yeah, overall, that was sort of that part of it. And of course, I have to get back Monday. So yeah, it was pretty much what I expected there. First of all, I got to the airport in Charlotte and found an interesting error message on this is one of the kiosks you use to check in there. 3.32 paper jam error to illogical command, which is kind of interesting. This isn't one I ran into. Someone else had that wonderful thing there when they were supposed to print out their boarding pass and stuff like that. But that was relatively routine. Spent time there. Met some folks who do a TCG podcast called The Crystal Mine, which I need to check out soon. Sorry about not getting around to that just yet. And then over on the right, I don't know if I've told you folks, I have a Tesla Model 3, so I had parked it at the Park and Ride. I would have probably just taken the bus to the campus interstate bus stop. However, the problem there is it was 10 degrees on Thursday morning. It was warmer by the time we got back here. You can see it's about 32 degrees outside, so I decided to heat up my car a little bit about 15-20 minutes before I got there. I didn't know if there was any snow on top of it from when I was gone. Doesn't seem like it. But that was a nice little convenience in there. Alright, some notable pulls that I got from the trading card game events I went to. First on the left you can see Mewtwo EX Terra. This is a lightning one. Still takes psychic energy though, of course. Mewtwo always a popular Pokemon, so not surprising to see it come back this way. In the middle you have Sandy Shocks EX. So this is of course one of the Paradox Pokemon from the past. So that 5 times fast. In any case, this is an ancient one. This is obviously a Magneton from years gone by. I guess they wasn't happy with just having the wooden Voltorb from Legends Arceus. The other side of the electric Gen 1 stuff or whatever inanimate object thing has to do with stuff too. The big thing about this one is I got this in one of the build-in battles, and it's a great card because if you look at the ability there, basically it lets you grab fighting energy out of the discard pile. As long as your opponent has 4 or fewer prize cards remaining. Now remember, in a build-in battle, it's a 40-card deck. You only have 4 prize cards, so it always is useful there once you get some energy in your discard pile, of course. So that worked out fairly well, and you should always watch out for cards like that are prize-based in a build-in battle. People will always gravitate towards those if they require a certain number of prize cards to be left, because, of course, you'll get there quicker, usually. And then on the right you have a full art, not rainbow, but just regular Larry over there. So one of that and, I don't know if it's Iono or Iono or exactly. It depends if it's a real name or not or one. But that and Larry are the 2 big breakout gym leaders, I think. Rhyme is probably number 3 on that list. But as far as Scarlet and Bud goes, so nice to see him there. And a very good supporter, potentially at least. You're always going to get at least a basic out of it, and if you're lucky you can get 2 Pokemon. So, a little risky, but still pretty good there. Alright, so there were some interesting experiments with the side events that they tried there. Some of them worked, some of them really didn't. Like I said, the Retro Dex was probably the one that I think worked least, and that was mainly just because of what we got dealt. The Ditto Draft, I'm sorry, not the Ditto Draft, I didn't get to do that. The Raid battle was mostly fine. It just doesn't scale that well to 9 or 10 people versus the DM. Yes, some of the attributes scale. The DM gets to draw more cards and stuff like that. It takes more damage to knock cards into the loss zone is actually where they end up going. But that might be better with a smaller group, or if, like I said, if you can get a square or round table rather than the lengthwise ones they had in that area, which are normally very useful in the TCG and didn't work out so great here. Another thing I noticed, general lack of trash cans in the, not in the convention center as a whole, but in the convention hall, which seemed very strange, especially when you have, all these pack battles and build-in battles and, formats like that where people have to unwrap stuff and there's always this trash around. And luckily, not too much of it ended up on the tables or the floor. I think the staff were pretty good about cleaning up most of that. But all the same, it was very strange that there seemed to be very few. I don't even know if they must have been there, because they must be taking the trash somewhere, but very strange with that. Another interesting thing, no bag checks. A lot of these events, it might be venue policy or something like that, but they usually do a bag check of some sort, just to check things as they come in here. Nothing like that here. They did obviously check to make sure you had your wristband and you were, valid to come in there. But that was a little interesting, and I guess it made it easier to go out and get food and come back. Let's see. So one event I would have loved to participate in, I didn't do any of the Pokemon Go side events, and apparently they had a scavenger hunt. And would very much have enjoyed doing that to fill in some more time. Those are always pretty good. I know they do those at like the internationals and usually at Worlds. I didn't find out about it until they made a PA announcement on like Sunday. It's like, oh, there's a scavenger hunt. I didn't remember hearing anything about that. I guess since it doesn't have a time anywhere, maybe they didn't make a big deal about it, and maybe it was being run out of the Go area where the main Go tournament was. I'm not sure. But really would have liked to have known that. Other thing, great food. Kind of expected that anywhere in the country or the world you can find some pretty good eats out there, but generally liked all the meals that I had while I was out there. Alright, couple updates on the Pokecasters Network, family of shows. First of all, Poke Science. Through the Ultra Wormhole, the Alola Catastrophe. Now, no, they're not talking about wormholes in space or in stuff like that. They're actually talking about cats and their effect on various ecosystems over the years, including in Hawaii, where Alola is, of course, based on Hawaii from those games. Welcome to the World of Pokemon, episode 170, Chinchou. We have the Reckless Rollers, Pokemix 117, Blackthorn City Bound, and I promise eventually I will get the next episode out on the feed in the next week or two, hopefully. That'll be the Pokepress Digest podcast. The Music of Pokemon Conquest is my next one to edit and put together. I am in a spot where I took a little bit of a break from editing due to some projects I've been doing here, as well as this weekend event and so on and so forth, and wanting to catch up on a few things here and there. But that will be the next episode that goes on the podcast feed. Of course, you can always check out the Raw one that we recorded last May or June, I want to say last year. But in any case, go ahead and check, be ready for that. Don't forget that Ann and I were planning next month on recording our Pokemon Concierge music discussion. So keep an eye out on the schedule for that. All right, well, that's it for the slideshow. And really covers most of what I wanted to get through today. So if you have any comments on this, I am going to send a little summary of the events I went to, as well as a link to this video to Overload Events, I believe is the name of the company that ran this particular. They run a lot of the East Coast-ish regionals here in North America. Toronto, Charlotte, Pittsburgh, and then I think they're running Orlando in the spring. So I will send some feedback their way about what worked and what didn't. And so that's going to be about that. But feel free to put in some comments. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, folks. See you around again another time.